Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sephirah Center of Shamanism. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. On this channel, we break down all things relating to the ancient shamanic and occult technologies, bring them into balance with the modern psychology and deep psyche. Today, we're going to be discussing dragon spirits and the Draconian Current. We're going to be looking at what dragon spirits actually are, the role in which they play in the cosmos, and their evolutionary potential. We're going to be looking at the Draconian Current in detail, what it is, what it's like to walk the path, what are some of the benefits and challenges of the path, and how its teachings can be effectively integrated into the modern world to get real, tangible results with it. So if this is something that interests you, particularly for those who are wanting to go into the deepest, most primal aspects of their unconscious mind to understand themselves on a deeper level and integrate some of the most repressed aspects of their psyche to grow into alignment with their soul, then this is going to be a very important video. So definitely stay tuned. So to really understand what dragon spirits actually are, we need to understand the role of the Draconian Current in our evolutionary paths. The Draconian Current refers specifically to a current of energy that flows through every living being. This current of energy represents our way back to our most primal nature, much the same as the Kundalini energy, the serpentine structure that sits dormant at the base of the spine, that once activated is said to facilitate our way back to the tree of knowledge that exists within ourselves, as well as our way back to true enlightenment from within the physical body. Just the same, the Draconian Current represents our way back to the realm of the true gods, also known as the primordial chaos. It's referred to as the realm of the true gods purely because it is the pure feminine space that literally dreams realities into existence. It's a space that meets no boundaries or laws, has no form, so cultivates form in order to define a meaning for itself. We are products of this void space, defining a meaning for ourselves through free will within a physical multiverse. Because we come from the primordial chaos, it's our home. So the serpentine structure within us represents our way back to the void space that exists within us. The void space, being a realm of dark matter, is resonant with the deepest portions of our unconscious mind. So to interact with the Draconian Current is to interact with a current of energy that leads you deep into your shadow and facilitates a powerful process of purification in order to shift you into closer resonance with your true divinity that was left outside of yourself when you experienced trauma and when you came into this physical incarnation. Being products of the primordial chaos, we all contain the power of it within us, but we've repressed it. We've repressed it to the point where we don't even know it exists. And that is what the Draconian Current leads us back to. It leads us back to the pure potential that dwells within our unconscious mind, that dwells within our shadow, that dwells within the primordial chaos. So when you interact with the Draconian Current, it takes you to the literal source that birthed everything into existence so that you can find your true self, and in doing so, dissolve the older identities that have been repressing and encasing your true self. When you come into contact with the void energies, two things will happen. It will first destroy, deconstruct, and then it will create. So the void space is the realm of creation and destruction. So anything that comes into contact with the void space that is not in harmony with one's true evolutionary potential, that will be dissolved in order to clear space for something new and more in harmony with one's truth and authenticity to be crafted from within that void space. When we go through that process of deconstruction, we free ourselves and find out who we really are beyond the constructs that we have created for ourselves in order to make sense out of the chaos. Once we allow ourselves to essentially be energetically stripped naked by the forces of the primordial chaos, we can find who we really are within that space of nothingness, because that space of nothingness is where we all came from. And when we embrace the nothingness and embrace the fact that nothing has a definitive meaning, and embrace what it is that we don't know and what simply can never be known, then we can start to reconstruct through infinity. When we embrace nothingness, we allow the dissolving to happen, the nothingness becomes infinity, the infinity becomes pure potential, and new realities can be birthed into existence from that place of pure potential. It's a lot to get your head around. So the primordial chaos is the realm that holds the worlds together because it birthed everything. It holds the architectural drawings for the house being the multiverses or the realms that are birthed from it. It holds the drawings, the architectural plans for these different realms, much like how our unconscious mind is what is responsible for birthing our reality into existence. It's all mirrored within the human psyche. So when we refer to the dragons, we're referring to the beings, the intelligences that dwell within the primordial chaos, that dwell within the abyss. The first dragons in existence were known as the primordial dragons, the beings that existed before everything, that existed within the pure nothing space, the extensions of pure infinity, namely Tiamat, who is said to have birthed our multiverse into being, Leviathan, Kingu, Absu, Apep, many other primordial dragons. Dragon spirits are intelligences that represent the forces of creation and destruction within the universe. Dragon spirits themselves are symbolic in terms of the qualities that they are said to have within mythological stories. So one of the most well-known myths surrounding dragons, it's pretty common for them in a particular story to be guarding a pot of gold or something that is symbolic to that. The dragons really represent the gatekeepers of the real treasure being our true divinity that exists within us. But in order to attain that gold, we need to face the fire of the dragon. Much like a mythological story, in order to attain the gold, we need to slay the dragon. But in terms of one's healing path, it is not a process of fighting the dragon, but in fact allowing ourselves to walk into the fire of the dragon, step into that furnace, and allow ourselves to dissolve so that we can then tap into that treasure that has always been within us. The fact that dragon spirits are often manifesting within mythological stories as these serpentine beings that breathe fire, this is very symbolic of that serpentine structure that represents the way back to the true self. In other words, the Kundalini, the fire of the Kundalini. So the fire of the dragon is a symbol of both purification and destruction. So in order to tap into that pot of gold, we need to allow that old self to be dissolved. So when you work with a dragon spirit, naturally you will go through a process of dissolving a layer of your skin in order to embrace who you are underneath it. You can work with dragon spirit in a more passive way. For example, just normal, what you class as dragon magic, is just ways of tapping into dragon spirits and dragon currents of energy to facilitate change on the physical level to some degree. That's a different thing to interacting with the Path of the Dragon, also known as the Draconian Current, which is an initiatory process. Interacting with dragon spirits is not being initiated into the current of the dragons. Initiating into the current of the dragons is being willing to step into that furnace and allowing the layers of your old self to fall away so that you can find your true divinity from within your physical body. So when we really look at that on a deeper level, in order to really get the most out of our work with the dragons, we need to actually embody the dragon. We need to become the dragon. And that is a continuous fluid process. Dragons are symbolically serpent-like beings that are constantly moving. So the path of the dragon, also known as the Draconian Current, is an extremely dynamic path that requires you to keep moving. It is not the path that you would want to seek if you are seeking an endpoint. Yeah, once you get pulled into the currents of the Draconian Current, once you get pulled into the currents of the primordial chaos, you can't back out. You can't go back from that. You're going to be pulled through those currents from the rest of your life, and you have to learn how to flow with those currents. It's not a small endeavor. Once you start to interact with these currents of energy properly, you are going to go through a significant process of realizing your true potential. But in doing so, you have to let go of the prisons that you have created for yourself in order to encase your true power. They don't call it the realm of the true gods for no reason. It is a realm that facilitates your process of self-deification. Once you step into the depths of the abyss, you have to allow the fire of the dragon to consume you. You have to allow the forces of the primordial chaos to consume every aspect of your false self so that you can embrace who you are underneath. The path of the dragon, also referred to as the Draconian Current, doesn't refer specifically to dragon energies per se. It is a path of embodying the primordial dragon, but what it really refers to is quite a broad set of practices and initiatory systems that represent some of the more harsh and primal forces of nature. So, for example, interacting with demonic entities could be considered a draconian practice, depending on the specific deities that you're tapping into. For example, there are aspects of Lilith that are more draconian in nature. You've got Hecate, you've got Lucifer, you've got Arachne, you've got all of these different draconian divinities, Tiamat, Leviathan, the primordial dragons, so interacting with the Draconian Current is interacting with a broad set of practices that is essentially designed to move you back to your true divinity from within the physical body. It's a path of extremely dense trials. You're going to be tested if you interact with the Draconian Current. You're going to go through a lot of grief. You're going to go through a whole share of different emotions that you may not feel are hugely pleasant to go through, but the rewards are significant. Because we're interacting with a current of energy which is of pure primordial chaos here, it's a hard energy to learn to harness. It's a path that can get quick results because we're working with dark matter energy and realistically quite destructive forces, or literally the most destructive forces in nature. Then they will quickly deconstruct things within your life that are no longer serving you. Once you open yourself up to that current, you'll be moved through it realistically quite quickly. But you're going to be moving at that pace, maybe even faster, for the rest of your life. So it's not a process of embarking on an initiatory system in order to get to the end of it. Because once you get to the end of that process, then you're going to need to then get to the end of another process, and then another process, and then another process. So much like the snake, you've got to be willing to continuously shed, stay fluid, stay moving. Yeah, allow yourself to be that primordial dragon slithering through the cosmos continuously, undergoing continuous metamorphosis, continuous death, continuous rebirth in order to embrace who you are. You have to be willing to let go of coping mechanisms. You have to be willing to let go of old constructs, old friends, old relationships that may have defined your false self, but are not in alignment with your true self, which exists within the deepest corners of your being. The process of acquiring your true self is not something which is done once, as I've said in previous videos. You can go through the process of allowing the abyss to consume you, and then you'll reach a place where you think that you know who you are, but the whole point of the Draconian Current is to continuously go through that process. So you will reach a point on the path where you realize, I think I know what my soul is here to do now. And then something will happen, and then you'll realize I absolutely don't know, because it's a path that is really about unlocking your deeper, more primal nature and the most primal aspects of yourself. So you've got to be willing to face these aspects of yourself, the aspects of yourself that could be extremely triggering to look at from the surface level. These could be parts that are holding on to repressed sexual urges. There could be parts that are holding on to enormous amounts of rage that your false self hasn't allowed you to feel. These could be parts that aren't even committed to life and want to die. You have to be willing to face all of them and embrace the death of the false self that's been encasing these child parts so that you can embrace who you really are underneath it. So the path of the dragon is one of merging with the primordial chaos. You have to be willing to allow the chaos to devour you, to devour who you thought that you were, to stream into your life and have the ripple effect in the world around you to facilitate the necessary evolution that you are needing to attain. The whole point is about continuous growth. When you interact with the Draconian Current, you are going to change significantly. You're going to keep changing on the cellular level. Your physical body will change. Your nervous system will shift as repressed traumas will come to the surface to be integrated. You will embark on the continuous process of soul rescue and soul retrieval to retrieve the aspects of yourself that you've learned is not safe to feel and embody from within your physical reality. It is a process of breaking down the walls of suppression and falling into perfect harmony with your shadow self. Falling into harmony with your shadow self, the more you do that, it's not going to make you immune from feeling emotions. If anything, you're going to start to feel things deeper. Okay, we need to understand that interacting with the Draconian Current is going to make us more sensitive. The more integrated our shadow self becomes, the more we form it as an ally, the weaker the veil between the conscious and the unconscious mind becomes, which means the more permission we give to the repressed aspects of our psyche to come through to the conscious mind to be integrated. When we are delving into the shadow on this level, we are allowing the shadow to look straight into us. Famous quote is that if you look in the abyss for long enough, it will look into you. A very similar concept here. We have to allow ourselves to gaze into the deeper aspects of the abyss, to tap into the currents of the primordial chaos so that we can really start to allow some of the deeper, more repressed aspects of ourselves to quickly and easily flow through to our conscious mind to be integrated. When we're delving into the shadow on this level, we are gaining more and more power and paradoxical control over the underworld planes and over our unconscious mind, which is the space that births our reality into existence. So when we are merging with the abyss, we are making a commitment to become a deified consciousness that is crafting its reality from the void space, crafting its reality from the place of pure potential so that we can embrace who we really are underneath it. And it's really not a path that you can step off of once you've stepped onto it. Once you're being pulled into those currents of the primordial chaos, you're not going to be able to back out. You're going to start to experience repressed traumas coming to the surface. in order to be integrated, you're going to start to feel things within your physical reality starting to fall away that are no longer in harmony with your soul. And these could be things that you have an attachment to. So it is something that you have to really surrender to once you're in it. You have to really allow yourself to kind of be carried by the current and understand that you are being carried by the current of your true self. And you're not going to go through anything that is not going to have evolutionary potential behind it. But if you fight the process, then that's when things get difficult. If you fight the process of self-deification and you attach to your older identities, this is going to have a lot of strain or impact a lot of strain on the nervous system because you're going to start to go through a process of letting go naturally. But if you're still holding on to that old self, then you risk actually being devoured by the currents of the primordial chaos yourself. And this is where psychosis can sort of come in because your soul is pulling you one way. You have aspects of your consciousness that are wanting you to go one way, and then you have, say, protector parts, other aspects of your consciousness that are fighting the process, and then you're kind of being pulled in two different directions. And that is the same as psychosis, an internal conflict that happens with the different aspects of our consciousness. So, it's important to understand that we can consciously think, I'm not resisting it, but we can also unconsciously resist the process as well, which is natural. But as we start being pulled through those currents of energy, we need to be willing to really look at the aspects of ourselves that are in resistance to the process and really, nurture them, hold them, reparent them so that we can continue with our evolutionary path. Whereas if, all of this stuff starts coming to the surface and you start getting those sort of regretful thoughts like, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I've made a mistake by doing this, then you're literally like starting a whole spiral of potentially re-traumatizing events that can come from these particular initiations. So if you fight the process, then it can be re-traumatizing. But if you relax into the process and are willing to continuously look at yourself, continuously look at your shadow, and integrate your inner child, then you will be absolutely fine. There's no two ways about it. You'll be absolutely fine. It's not me trying to make it sound scary or me trying to make it sound like I've got something that you don't, because I don't. I'm in the current of energy. I'm being pulled through it. I'm being pulled through the cliff off at this moment in time. And, it's full of rich rewards, but extremely dense challenges, as I said before. So it is advisable to have a foundation of strong shadow integration. For me, I had my shamanic work before I stepped into this current, which is very much focused on shifting one back into the natural flow of death and rebirth. So I was familiar with that process of, feeling and processing emotions, letting go of attachments and things like that. But if this is the first current of energy that you've worked with and you haven't done much self-development before, not saying don't do it, but it is advisable to at least start working with some of the spirits from these pantheons, such as Lilith, Hecate, Tiamat, Leviathan, those types of spirits, so that you can really kind of get a feel for the currents of energy that are that you're going to be pulled into through the Draconian current, basically. There are also different methods of initiation as well. When we're referring to the Draconian current, we're referring to the currents of the primordial chaos. So, there are many ways that you can initiate through that. The most notable way is through the Dark Kabbalah, the Tree of Qliphoth, representing the shells or husks that have been created to encase your true self. So this is quite a well-known form of draconian initiation, but is one that is quite extreme, is one that is going to make you face some of the deeper, more repressed aspects of yourself. But once you complete that process, you're also going to be pulled through a much bigger process of initiation that is going to extend far beyond that structure itself. So, systems such as the Qliphoth, such as the current of Apep, and other similar currents, they are simply gateways into this practice. But once you start being pulled in, then you're going to be pulled through it for the rest of your life. So just be open and willing to surrender to the process as much as possible and have a foundation of shadow integration before you get into this current. Working with dragon spirits can also help in the process as well, and I have many courses that can guide you through that process. And being in the current myself, I can also guide you through the process of preparation and through your process of initiation if it's something that you feel called to, bearing in mind that I can only help you to a point, because the whole point of going back to the realm of the true gods and self-deification is forging your own path, but it can be helpful to have a guide nonetheless. So thank you guys. This is all I'm going to speak about in today's video. If this was helpful to you, hit like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.